Right, great. Welcome, guys. Okay, so we'll get started on time at 9 p.m. Okay, so very quickly, for those of you who are first time here joining us, I would like to welcome you. Okay, and what we usually do to give you a broad perspective of what we do over here is I'll share with you some of the potential setup that I'm personally looking out for. Whether is it going to be FX, commodities, crypto market, basically in the financial market. The first portion of this sharing, what we'll do is we'll look into the opportunities for the week. Okay, and once I do that, I'll open up the remaining time of the session for Q&A. Okay, so if you have any particular questions, you would like to find out a little bit more about trading, investing, that's the opportunity for you to ask questions. And of course, if there's any specific pairs that you wish to kind of like have a different opinion, right, that's also the opportunity for you to kind of like drop it in the comments chat box, and then from there I'll be able to kind of share my view with you. All right, so let's get started with this week's episode over here. Okay, so first up, I'll share with you some of the opportunities that I'm personally kind of looking out for. Okay, now first up over here, I'm actually looking at Canadian yen. Now this is a trade that we kind of took it last week on Friday. I really can't recall exactly whether we did share about this particular pair on the Monday or even Tuesday, right? I've been doing quite a bit of different sharing. Okay, various languages as well, English and Chinese. So I can't really exactly kind of recall if I mentioned this pair, last week Monday. But I think, at least on Thursday when we did Chinese, definitely I'll talk about that, right? Because this setup was pretty clear cut. Right, so far for now, we are already having this trade running. So again, as part of risk management, we have actually shift our stops to break even, and basically we are still looking up to the target around 88.3. Okay, so over here, let me hide this a little bit, and why I still want to bring this up is simply because I think there is an opportunity that you want to also keep an eye on. Okay, perhaps on a lower time frame. Okay, on a 1 hour time frame. Okay, so over here, this principle, what we call is called scaling in, which means that if you already have a trade running and it's already profitable, you have kind of like mitigate the risk, you have shift your stops to break even. That's where your second opportunity to jump onto the same pair where you stack up, right? When you actually made profits on this idea here, if let's say price just keeps going up towards our final target, that's where then we have two trades running. Okay, and both of it, the risk to reward ratio will be really solid. Okay, that's what we call by scale in. Okay, so right now what I see is that I like this 1 hour chart where you can see very clear impulse correction. So you do expect that push to the upside. Okay, and of course we also get this mini impulse correction, and then right now we are seeing price starting to push higher. Okay, now I don't really like what in terms of like this is doing right now. Okay, I think with this push here, especially on Monday, at this time, no news, no catalyst, this kind of push is not going to be sustainable. Okay, because what I've experienced is that most of the time it's just going to be a fake one, and then what happens is it's probably going to consolidate, okay, until maybe tomorrow London session, and then only it takes off. But of course, having said that, there will be rare times where it just keep going, right? So, but for me, I would say, okay, don't need to rush in. My experience here with the market is that most of the time this is just going to be consolidating until tomorrow London session, and then that's where the trade starts to take off. Okay, so over here is an opportunity for you guys as well. If let's say you have not get involved in the dollar cat and you start to see a correction by tomorrow, somewhere around London session, okay, then you get a very nice impulse correction, and then of course a mini impulse, another mini correction. Then that's the trade to take to the upside, right? Okay, so I'll be definitely looking at that as well for potential scale in. Okay, and let's see how it goes. Okay, so this one here, definitely you want to keep an eye for the week. Okay, another one that I have it in my watch list that you can also look out for is actually the Kiwi franc. Okay, so let me take this away so that it's not too complex. Is something like that, right? Okay, so you can see over here, maybe let me bring you to daily first, right? So for those of you who needs a little bit of recap as to why we're looking at this pair, very clear on the daily structure. We have this push up, We have this flag here, right? So what we expect this to just keep going up, right? Higher chance this will go up than coming down. And of course, from a daily point of view, where can price slightly heads towards? Somewhere around here, 6765. Okay, of course, this is a very conservative target because if that breaks, naturally this can keep going higher. Okay, but the first target or TP here you want to put out is around 6765. That's on the daily, right? So if you go down to the 4-hour time frame, you can see similar patterns happening as well. You get a push up, and then right now it's looking more like a consolidation, right? So over here, we are expecting a 3-wave correction. So a simple Elliott wave, you can put in A, B, C, W, X, Y. Okay, doesn't matter what you label it. For me, I usually put in W, X, Y, right? So you can see this is a simple 3-wave corrective pattern. So you do expect price to come down a little bit more. But of course, I always say, right, Monday market movement, sometimes it's a little bit of a fake, okay, which means that it tends to move, but then after that, it decides to pull back, right? That's what Monday usually tends to do. That's my observation, right? So again, with such a push here, I'm not too worried if this will just keep going because most of the time it doesn't. And we still expect this to come down, maybe somewhere around this region at 6540, okay, for a potential buy to the upside. Okay, it does not need to come down, obviously, right? But same thing as cat yen. If let's say by tomorrow on the 1-hour scale, you do see a mini flag here, okay, that is also a potential trade to the upside. Okay, so the risk to reward ratio is definitely there. Just a very quick one to show you if we take this kind of like setup. Okay, you can see the risk to reward is close to 1:4, right? Up to this daily target over here. So it's definitely worth the risk involved. Okay, so something for you guys to monitor for the week as well, because I think this setup here, when we talk about cat yen and of course Kiwi franc here, this setup can be as soon as maybe tomorrow or even Wednesday, depending on how market's going to develop. Okay, so if you are shorter term trading and you're looking for opportunities, then do pay close attention to cat yen and of course Kiwi franc over here. Okay, so these two are definitely something you want to keep in your watch list. Now another one, I think Euro Yen, we've been talking about it since last week. Okay, nothing has changed, right, up to now. But I think you still want to keep a very close watch because definitely if this starts to go, you have that room to the downside, right? Same thing as last week. I'm not interested in the upside. I mean, if price keeps going up like that in a very slow manner, I'm definitely not interested. Okay, I think this can still go up, right? And then that forms a clearer 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. From here, this can still come back down. Okay. So we are not kind of like, we understand that there's possibility of going up, right? But at the same time, I'm not very interested in the upside. I would rather wait and focus on the setup that allows me to sell it. Okay, so over here on the 4-hour scale, again, likely this can be broken. Okay, so just be patient. I think right now there's no setup that allows me to execute a trade. Perhaps you have with your strategy. Okay, but I would say if you want to focus on Euro Yen, look out for the sell. Okay, sell opportunity would be more attractive than any buy setup. So for me over here, I think this trade, maybe by this week, we might not even get it. Okay, again, depending on how market move, Monday is a little bit early, but let's see. Okay, so if this week doesn't have anything, then that's it, and then we'll look at it next week anyway, because I think the downside is something that is very, very attractive. Okay, another one for the week to keep an eye on is Euro Kiwi. Okay, I think 4-hour you can see, right, with some of the drawings over here, very, very obvious. You get this impulse, you get this correction. Price is now falling. Okay, but of course, there's no need to rush in. If this were to go, if this pattern here is gonna go, it's gonna come down more, right? You have ample room to actually capitalize on that move. There's no need for us to be FOMO, okay, fear of missing out. Now on the 1-hour scale, obviously this is not a setup you want to take because this is a 1-hour impulse. Now if let's say by tomorrow, before London session, we start to see some kind of flag, this is a potential setup that I'll be considering. Okay, if we see a flag by tomorrow. Okay, why? Because we do see a very clear 1, 2, 3. And this is more or less done potentially, and then if this comes down here and form a flag, that will be super ideal to take the trade. Okay, and of course with this kind of setup, right, this gives me the opportunity to share with you a little bit more, right? Usually these are the stuff that we share in our community, in our mastermind group. But since we are on this, the opportunity presents itself. I'll just share quickly as well. This principle here that we talk about, you might see some of the snippets of the video where we talk about context, right? And I remember we released a short video as well talking about not all flags, not all patterns are the same. Okay, because let's say this pattern or the flag here occurs at this situation, at this location of price on the chart, then it's right smack in the middle of the top and the bottom, right? So that's what we call more or less like no man's land, right? That reduces my conviction to the trade. That reduces the probability of the setup as well. Okay, in comparison, if let's say this just keep pushing down today, and then maybe it takes another couple of days to do a correction at the bottom here, okay, that increases that probability to the downside, right? Of course, that's the difference between this location and at the bottom, okay? Both are flags, but where the flag happens is pretty crucial. And of course, if let's say here it just give back a V-shaped formation and then starts to form a crawl, okay, at the top over here, this here is the most ideal setup. Okay, the reason is again because we do have a flag on a bigger scale, and then we have a crawl happening on a smaller time frame at the top of the bigger scale flag. Okay, so again, the principle of context, kind of like make it slightly different where the pattern appear. Okay, so keep an eye on this Euro New Zealand. Right, depending on how price is going to develop tonight. By tomorrow London, you might get a trade, or you might need to maybe wait out for maybe 1 or 2 more days. Okay, but in any case, I think the direction is very straightforward on Euro New Zealand at this very moment. I would rather focus on sell instead of any buy setup. Okay, so this is on Euro New Zealand. New Zealand dollar here as well. I remember last week we did talk about it, right? And looking at how it's developing right now, okay, I can say with certain confidence that likely price will just head up and break this high. Okay, we are pretty close towards there already, right? Right now it's trading around 7220. This high here is 7270, right? It's about 50 pips. You can easily hit it in a day, right? That's the daily average movement of dollar. Okay, so looking at things here, I think this can just keep going up, and if it does, with a smaller crawl pattern, fantastic, right? We'll have a solid trade to the downside. Okay, why again? I think very clear cut. You have a potential double top, and then of course, not only that, you have, let's say, a crawl here, right? And then you have a bigger crawl here. Everything stacks up for that sell trade. Right? So let's see how it goes. I think you need to be a little bit patient. Maybe wait out for 2 days. Okay, I don't think by tomorrow you get it. Okay, because looking at how it plays out over here, this can of course. Market likes to do a lot of fakes. Okay, so what you can do is this. You can go up a little bit, come back down, and then the traders here will probably be also looking to sell, right, with the double top, and then after that maybe start to go back up and then only come down, right, and then that completes what we call a bigger crawl pattern. So that's why I think over here we did talk a little bit about expectation as well, right? A diagonal, usually you expect a 5 wave. That's why Elliott Wave ending diagonal, you count 5. 1, 2, 3, 5. Okay, so roughly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So you expect it to come somewhere around there. So be patient a little bit on New Zealand dollar, okay? But have this in your watch list, because I think if this starts to drop, the opportunity, the room to the downside is definitely there, right? It's definitely worth taking a quick look on that. Okay, so add this into your watch list for the week as well, right? Dollar. Other than that, there's some short term here that we can talk about, like dollar franc, okay, and dollar yen. These two are more or less similar in nature. Okay, you can see the patterns, how they move, more or less same as well. Okay, now I think this one here is more of a short term trade. Okay, you can call it intraday or even intra week. Okay, so it's more towards day trading stuff. Now, those of you who knows me or follow me for some time, I'm more towards swing trading, right? I'll look up for opportunities that I can, hold it for the long run. The room for price to move can be bigger. Okay, so these are trades that I would say dollar franc and dollar yen are more towards day trading. Okay, why is because the room for which you put your target is not that far off. Okay, so let me use I'll talk a little bit more in detail using dollar franc. Okay, but I want you to then see the correlation between dollar franc and dollar yen is more or less similar. So whatever analysis we've done on dollar franc can be replicated onto dollar yen as well. Okay. So we won't go in detail for both because they're more or less similar, but I'll use dollar franc here to talk a little bit in details. Okay. So first up over here, I think with this drawing, you can see this is very obviously the momentum to the downside has started to slow down. That's a crawl, okay? If you look at the RSI or any momentum indicators, you probably see a divergence as well. Okay, and a divergence simply tells you that the momentum is lacking. There's a potential reversal coming. Okay, so over here, what we're seeing is that you even have like a 1 hour double bottom. Okay, so pattern like this tells us there's a higher chance that this can come back up either as a full reversal or just correction to the upside and then another move down. Okay. Honestly, at this right moment, you won't know what's going to happen, right? Whether is it a full reversal to the upside or is it just going to be a correction for another move to the downside? We won't know until we see what price does here. Okay, because price can either do a correction like that. Of course, if that happens, this will still keep going down. That's the probability. If let's say price reverse very sharply and starts to form a correction like that, then you know, okay, likely going to continue to the upside, right? So next move here is going to give us that information to project the following one. But for now, okay, if you are looking at day trading, short-term trading, then the direction you want to focus is definitely buy. Okay, and one target to be very, very conservative, you want to aim for is somewhere around 9280, I would say. Okay, where this diagonal started, usually the correction will go back there. So you realize that it's not a huge move, right? Price is trading somewhere around 9160, right? So that's about 120 pips, right? It's very decent for a short-term day trading projection. But if I'm looking at swing trading, that's probably not very attractive, right? Of course, what we can do is we can also include in some of the Fibonacci retracement. You do realize that that 50% mark, have a little bit. Okay, that 50% mark does come very close towards there as well, right? So it's more like a confluence around 9280, 9290. That's the region you want to potentially look to target for your short-term buy. Okay. How to trade it, how to get involved in it. There are many ways to be executing a trade, right? You can look for a simple breakout. Depending on how aggressive you are, you can be a simple breakout like that with a risk reward of okay, maybe about 1:1.1. Right? If you squeeze this, of course, a little bit, you can increase your reward to 1:1.5. Pretty decent for a short-term trade. Okay. This can happen maybe by tomorrow, right? For those of you who are interested. Okay. Maybe this is more like the 1 hour time frame trade, right? Okay. So this is something that I want to share with you. The opportunity is definitely on the table, but it's not something I'll trade from swing trading point of view. It's something that maybe as a day trader, short-term, intraday, this is an opportunity. Okay, so again, you can see, right, while opportunities are on the table does not mean that as a trader you always just grab every trades that you can see, okay, or you don't just execute every trade. I want you to also see that while we are sharing over here, there are actually little lessons, processes here and there, in terms of like top process that you can actually pick up, right? You realize that this trade here is a pattern I recognize. Okay, it's a trade that is valid, but I don't take it. Right, the reason is because my style doesn't fit this kind, okay, of short term. Okay, so I want you to see those little details that we are. Okay, dollar yen, of course, very, very similar. Okay, so same thing over here. You can use some Fibonacci here to kind of like guide you target. Okay, of course, put it here, right? So we sides with like your previous structure level here as well. Okay, and yep, okay, similar. Okay, you have a crawl, you have a diagonal. You have a divergence, right? And that's how you look at it. Okay, pretty similar. And of course, for those of you who are quick enough in technical analysis, if let's say this were to come up like that, you have a head and shoulder pattern, right? Solid. And take the trade down, right? Depending on how you want to play it, I don't trade a head and shoulder pattern, but again, this is how we do forecasting, right? Pre-plan few steps ahead of the market so that whatever it does, you are already more or less anticipating it to happen, right? Same thing in dollar franc, right? Let's say this comes up here, okay, that gives you kind of like a head and shoulder pattern as well. Okay, so keep an eye on that. Dollar franc, dollar yen for those of you who are interested. Okay. The other one you want to perhaps keep into your watch list is Kiwi cat over here. Okay, if you take a look at this, I think on a 1 hour is here. Okay, you do see this pattern here, right? Again, potentially head and shoulder pattern. We do have some fit here, 50 and 618 of this move. Okay, and price is basically going up very slow now. Now, the only thing I'm a little bit cautious here is that this can come down a little bit before it goes back up, and then only it starts going. Something like that. Okay, why? In terms of Elliott Wave, usually is 1, 2, right? ABC, fine. Okay, so just be a little bit patient on that. Okay, it does not need to do it, but traders, you always patient. You always have your own expectation of what price is going to do. Wait it out until it does what you want to see, and then you execute. Okay, so same thing over here, Kiwi cat, potential downside. Okay, with the target here back at that previous low around 8,740. Okay, so you can actually look out for that, right? Keep an eye on it. Okay, and of course, last one here, I think Wti Crude Oil. Now, I don't really trade commodities like that, right? But no, I don't really touch oil, to be honest. Okay, if you ask me about commodities, I usually will focus on like precious metal. Okay, that's where I put my emphasis on commodities. There was once last year I looked at natural gas a little bit, but you know the opportunity didn't really came for us to kind of take it. I don't really look at crude oil, okay? For trading, right? I look at it from intermarket correlation, but I don't really execute trade on crude. But for those of you who are keen, I think this week you can potentially look at a short-term downside move. Okay, so very obvious, right? You see this impulse. I've even put in some of the count 1, 2, 3, 5, and then you get a ABC, WXY. Then right now you can expect 1, 2, 5 breaking that 5,730. That would form your 3-wave correction, maybe for the next push to the upside. Okay, so for this week, you know, don't look too far off first. Okay, this week over here, I think it's very obvious this is an impulse. This can potentially develop into correction. That's your trade down for the week. Okay, so keep an eye on that. For those of you who are keen in crude oil, okay, potential target is down here at $57.30. Okay, yeah. So that's that part on it. In terms of like other precious metal, gold and silver, again, nothing has changed fundamentally. Nothing has changed from a macro perspective since last week. We are still interested in the upside. Okay, all the way back up minimum towards 2074. Okay, and on the 4-hour time frame here, one potential target you guys can keep an eye on is somewhere around 1760. Okay, and of course, what I like about it is right now is doing correction. Right, the longer it takes for it to come down, the better it is, because correction you want it to go slow. Okay, and if it's gonna go slow over here, I think this week would probably be consolidation phase. If that is, then you have a solid move, I would say a solid opportunity to actually trade it to. Okay, so that's on gold. Right, so I hope that's clear, right? So this week, there are definitely some good opportunities on the table for you guys to go and keep an eye on. Okay, and of course, whether is it short term, long term, I think this session here we did kind of cover some opportunities on both sides. Okay, hope that's clear. Great. Okay, so that's really all from my side for the week based on what I'm seeing today. Okay, of course, as market develop throughout the week, things might change. We always flow with the market. Okay, we always update our analysis and our opinion on the market depending on how it develops. and never get too fixated into your own analysis, right? That's very okay. So if you guys have any questions or any particular, let's say, instrument, any particular asset that would like me to share my view, okay, I'll open up the remaining time right now for you guys to ask questions. Okay, so if you have any, just type it in the chat box, and then from there I'll be able to look at your questions, okay, and answer them accordingly. Anyone? Okay, if you have any, you can put it in the question box, chat box, right? Just type your question in, or let's say if you have any particular instrument you'd like me to analyze, you can do that as well, right? And then from there I'll share with you my view. Okay, right, seeing a few questions coming in. Okay, so good. Okay, there's someone. Okay, I'll address your questions later on. Okay, so I see a few here. We have someone asking about pound cat GC pound cat, right? Someone asking about silver. Okay, and also about BTC, right? So we'll take a look at those three first. Okay, let's talk about pound cat first, right? Currency, and then we'll go into silver, and then we'll go into Bitcoin. Okay, now pound cat over here. Okay, let me clear off everything, and then we'll start off from a blank chart. Now first look at pound cat on daily. Okay, now again, when I see something like that, right? Let's say I'm zooming in a little bit. Okay, let me change back the screen. Okay, now if I'm seeing something like that on pound cat, right, and this is on the daily scale, right, you do realize that it's a bit choppy, it's a little bit confusing, it's probably not the easiest chart to look at. Okay, usually what I do, I just zoom out, right, and then what I do realize after that is that this is basically an entire sideways move. Okay, and of course from here, this is where the impulse is, and then this is where the sideways move is. Okay, so if I take a look at from it this scale, then likely this can, you know, in the long term, you're still looking for an upside. Okay, but one thing immediately that jumps in is, of course, if this is a sideways move, we do have this here as a high, this here as a low. Okay, and we do realize that this low has yet to be broken. Okay, so you get an impulse push up, you get a first one down, second one up, and then this is where you expect this to come down and break this low. Okay, that's how the Elliott Wave count usually is, right? 1, 2, 3. So from this perspective, then I would expect the pound cat here, you know, eventually to keep coming down and break that level. Put this in around 6540. Okay. And of course, if I zoom in, starting to zoom in a little bit here, you do see this pattern here as well. From this high, you have this push, you have this sideways move, and then you can expect this, right? And this is what we call potentially an expanding flat. Okay, so if from that perspective, from here, then what I would say is, if you want to look out for pound cat, focus on the downside. Okay, whether is it going to come back to 6540, perhaps not. Okay, but I think with this pattern here, you do expect at least one more push, maybe, you know, minimum somewhere around here, right? Around 1.69 area. Okay, I think that will be the target. So daily chart, the higher time frame, I will be focusing on sell if I'm looking at that. Okay, and then of course on the lower time frame, if I were to draw in some lines here to illustrate to you patterns, okay, roughly this is how it looks like. Okay, if I were to put in some labeling, okay, that's how I'm gonna put A. Okay, So this is what we call an expanding flat structure, right? Because you can see that the lows and the highs are broken, but overall is basically a sideways move, right? Usually that's what we call an expanding flat. Okay, so yeah, I mean that's the analysis. I think the direction that you want to focus on is downside. Okay, but for me, of course, what you want is a very decent flag structure before any sell trade. Okay, you wouldn't want to just jump in like that. Okay, yeah. So pound cat over here, I would say if you're looking for a sell, if you're looking to execute trades on this, the direction to focus is perhaps on the sell side. Okay, and I think on a 4-hour time frame, you can see the momentum is to the downside as well, right? So overall, focus on sell, but you definitely need your own execution to get involved in. Yeah, great. I hope that helps. The other one is on silver, right? Okay, actually, silver is more or less similar to, I would say, gold. Okay, the macro story, the big picture here, the fundamental is due to the upside. And of course, silver here, we are still looking for a target. Very conservative here is about $30. Okay, and right now, okay, very similar to gold chart. Okay, if I were to drop some reference point, thing like that, you want to potentially be a little bit patient, okay, for a nicer correction to happen. Okay, so right now, what I see is that this is a push up. It's potentially forming its correction, right? Same thing as gold. For this to develop, you might need to give it maybe a couple of days because we are on a 4-hour scale. Okay, a couple of days means that by maybe closer to the end of the week, maybe Thursday or Friday, and if this forms a very decent flag that looks something like that, okay, your potential entry here again is somewhere around the $25.65, $25.40. Okay, so somewhere around there. So same thing, okay, this week I would expect it to just further consolidate, nothing much. I want it to do it slowly, right? So I think the opportunity to maybe get involved in silver would probably come closer to the end of the week. If not, then maybe even next week, right? So that's on silver. Now let's take a look at BTC, right? Okay, probably use Bitcoin based fee. Now let me, drawing wasn't here, okay, but fee is on Bitcoin futures. Okay. Okay, now just to have you be aware is that you know, every data feed on crypto market, the pricing is slightly different. Okay, because at this very moment, other than the futures market, the other Bitcoin prices are not centralized. So each of the pricing might be a little bit different. Okay, so usually why I use the futures market to do charting is because futures market are centralized market. The pricing is a little bit more of like standard, right? Okay, so if I look at this on the, use the futures to analyze, right? The pattern is more or less the same. The price point might be slightly different. Okay, so I just want you to be aware. But the analysis and the outlook of it is gonna be similar. Okay, because the patterns of how price move, whether is it futures or whatever exchanges you use, more or less similar. Okay, so right now on this scale, if I zoom in a little bit, okay, you do see that we have this pattern, right? And I still remember, I'm not sure if I shared over here on YouTube with you guys, but we did talk about how you want to be very cautious buying Bitcoin back then before this drop. Okay, and this is something that we anticipate, right? Because every time you see a pattern like that, just be very cautious on the buy. Okay, so right now this is coming down. It actually broke this, but it hasn't really touches this low, right? Again, that low is where the start of that whole diagonal is, right? Usually based on Elliott Wave, it'll come back down here. Okay, so I'm seeing this rather more of like, today it has a strong rebound. Now this is where a lot of people would probably get sucked in or sucked back in, where they start to see, oh, it has dropped so much, and then now it starts to recover. Maybe it's a time to get involved in, and then maybe it will break the new high from here. Okay, I would say be cautious. Okay, because what market can do is that you know, if this is gonna be a correction, it's gonna probably take some time to do it, and then like that. Okay, probably gonna take some time. So yep, this is definitely a rebound, but would this rebound be breaking all-time high? Do not know yet. Okay, because most of the time market is slow, right? A correction, right? Let's look back, right? So you see here, you know, the correction does take some time. Even here, it does take some time, right? So yeah, I would say depending on how aggressive you are, right? If today you are a little bit more conservative, just be patient. Okay, this one here I can remove it. Just be a little bit patient, because then this can just develop maybe something like that and then come back down. Then somewhere around here, maybe that would that opportunity to get involved in. Okay, but of course, if you are maybe someone who don't mind holding on to Bitcoin for long term, you can of course go in small here first. Okay, and let's say if it just consolidate and then it comes lower, you can add in another position at the bottom here, and then you have two positions running. Okay, that's definitely possible. In the event that, let's say, this whole thing does not happen and then price just keep going up from here, right? So at least you have like one small position running. You're okay with that psychologically. Okay, so yep, that's my view on Bitcoin. Okay, hope that helps, right? Now I will always do say that fundamentally, crypto market has yet to be proven to have any fundamental value. Okay? It's still a very speculative asset at this current moment. And I think if you're in this space of crypto market, I think you have also probably come across news that talk about how China is also coming out with its own digital currencies. Okay, and of course, with that, you have multiple countries starting to go into digital currencies as well, Euro especially. And then, of course, you have like the US. Okay, I'm not sure how true this news is, right? There's headlines popping up here and there. US talking about how they're gonna put in taxes on crypto gains, okay? And that's definitely gonna hurt the market, okay? So I want you to see that right now, it's still, while you know mainstream is hitting it in, okay, do take note, it's still a speculative asset, right? There's really no fundamental backing on crypto at this moment. Okay, so if you are trading it, you know, you can still of course make money from it, but I would say don't put too big chunk of your portfolio into crypto market, right? Go small, don't go all in. Okay, hope that helps. Okay, yeah. Okay, so I'm seeing over here, we have Euro Australia, Euro Cat as well. Okay, so we'll take a look at Euro Australia and Euro Cat. Okay, um, okay, Euro Australia. Okay, from a 4-hour time frame perspective, okay, I would say you can focus on down, but again, no, this week I don't think it's like the clearest setup or currency pair you want to keep an eye on. Now, if you want to trade it, then I would say focus on the downside, because on the daily time frame, sorry, yep, this is on the daily, right? On the daily time frame, it looks like this is a flag forming. Okay, then from there you expect this to come back down to a zero. But again, you want to look at this here. The room to the downside looks a little bit small, right? So it's not something that I'll put too much emphasis on. Okay, yeah, on the 4-hour scale, you don't really see a very nice pattern as well. You get a lot of like impulses. Then you know it's just choppy, right? So there are much clearer setup that I'm personally looking out for the week. Okay, so Euro Australia here, my personal take is it's not gonna be an easy one for the week. Okay, but if you are looking to trade this, or let's say you want to focus on Euro Australia, I would say focus on the downside for now for this week. Okay, based on what we have right now. Okay, and two levels here for you to keep an eye on is around 5355, which is this low here, and of course the other one based on the daily low, that is 5250, right? Okay, that's on Euro Australia. Euro Cat. Okay, very obvious Euro Cat if you want to look at it downside. Okay, Okay, yeah, EuroCAD, if you're looking at it, this is definitely downside, and the potential target here is around, okay, I'll round up a little bit, that's 4720. Okay, yeah, so EuroCAD, if you want to look out for it, direction to focus is down. Okay, but for me, this is not something too attractive compared to some other pairs, because what I'm seeing over here is on a higher time frame, this can be the low, right? Okay, this can be the low if I were to draw something like that. So you do see that from this here, you have your push up and then your corrective very, very big. Okay, and then of course you have that mini impulse push. So this can be just, you know, for developing a corrective pattern for another push to the upside. Okay, so you do realize like 4 hour, the momentum is to the downside, but on the daily scale, you want to be a little bit cautious on selling. Okay, and anyway, the downside opportunity is not that big, right? Versus the room to the upside, right? So where you have mixed signals like that, one time frame telling you upside, the other telling you momentum is to the downside, you get conflicting mixed signals. Usually I would say just give it another week or so to show you clearer picture, right? Because on the 4 hour scale, what can happen is this. Okay, while the momentum is to the downside, this can happen, right? Come down and then go back up and then come back down, then just basically just develop into a very, very long sideways move. And if you're looking to sell, then you wouldn't want to be in this area as well, right? Because if you're selling this, you know, you make some profits here, you get into drawdown, you recover your drawdown, and then you make some profits, and then after that, maybe it takes off, right? So psychologically, it's very difficult for you to handle such trade. Okay, so again, if you can, I would suggest stay away from EuroCAD. If you want to look for trade, then short term here, focus on the downside opportunity. Okay, so that's on Euro. Yeah, I'm seeing another question over here asking on S&P. Okay, and then well, before that, okay, I see Tag here asking about dollar franc. Now I'll reply your. Oh, you deleted that. Okay. I'll reply your question on that. After we cover all our analysis, right? If you still like to know that, okay. Because I think that's the fundamental aspect of trading. Okay, that's the fundamental aspect of trading. We'll talk about that after we do our analysis. Okay. Now, your question is what level can we execute on dollar franc? Now over here, right? I want you guys to know that I'm very cautious in in kind of like telling you exactly where or how to get involved in trade. Okay, there's a reason to it. Okay, because every one of us has slightly different style. Okay, and how or where or when to execute a trade really boils back down to your personality, your style, the trading method that aligns with you. Right? Because there are just so many ways to get involved in a trade, right? You can be like a candlestick formation trader, can be an indicator looking at maybe moving average, can be someone who is looking for fit retracement, you can be someone looking for breakout, okay? And all methods work. Okay, the question back is, does it fit you? Does it fit into your style? Okay, so that's why you realize that I do my very best to give you as much detail in terms of the analysis that I can, but at the same time, I'm very cautious in telling you exactly where to enter, right? Because some of you, okay, would just blindly follow, and that's the worst case that I want you to do, right? Because if you blindly follow, you know, you watch today's sharing, and then we have an order, and then let's say tomorrow the market develops differently, we change the order, we edit the order, or we even remove the order, but you're not aware of it because you have no idea what you're doing, and then you're just blindly following. Okay, so that's the worst thing I would want you to do. Okay, and that's why you realize that I don't share with you exact like entry and things like that. Okay, because that will harm you if you have no idea what you're doing and you're blindly following. Right? So I can share with you the rough idea and the principle concepts or even framework of how you can look at it. Okay, for me, I always look at either a fit retracement or a breakout. Okay, nothing too fanciful about it. If I'm taking a look at this trade here, let's say if this is going down to 1 hour scale, okay, a simple breakout like that will do the work. Okay, the idea is like you find some prominent high point where you have this structure in as well. This is where the high is, and if this breaks out here, you break that structure, you break that high. That's what we call a breakout. Okay, so this is a framework that I use as well to kind of execute my trade. But I do not want you to just blindly follow and say, okay, this is where I'm going to put in the entry order. Because over here, if let's say price develop by tomorrow, right? You don't get involved in this trade, and tomorrow something changes in the market, and let's say from here, this just keep going up very, very slow and forms a flag or even crawl like that. Then there's no way I'm still going to buy it, right? Because this tells me this is coming down. Okay, and from there, as a trader, you need to then manage your position, manage your trade, whether is it still pending or not. You need to look for exit, okay, or even cancel it. Okay, so I want you to be aware of that. Okay, so while we are sharing here ideas and things like that, you need to definitely have your strategy, you need to have your methodology, get involved in all this trade. Okay, so I think that's very, very important. Okay, so I see another one on S&P, right? So let's talk about that. Okay, now if you're looking at the stock market, okay, you can see today's market is open and is pushing a little bit higher. Okay, now I think there are different takes on the stock market right now, right? Some people would say that it's too high. Some people would say that it's the momentum is up, it's breaking all-time high, let's just keep buying. Okay, so there's always that two groups of people. And I recall last weekend, I would say this weekend, I recall I see an article talking about Mike Burry, who is the one that make a lot of money in the big short, kind of like liquidating 70% of his portfolio, right? And article basically talks about how potentially, why is he liquidating so much of his portfolio? Is it because potentially the stock market is gonna crashing? Is it gonna be another 2008 event? Now this is the part where I think even as a trader or investor, you need to have your own point of view, right? Your own stand. Just same as like today you're listening to me sharing my opinion. You need to have your own stand, right? At the end of the day, right? Just take my opinion as like another perspective. So my view, right? So like his view, based on the article, is that you want to be very cautious on the stock market, okay? Because he liquidated 70% of his portfolio, right? But what I see over here is that from a macro perspective is that we are not likely going to see a crash. Okay, yes, maybe a correction, but not a crash. Okay? So I'm still a little bit bullish on the entire stock market, on the financial market, simply because of how macro perspective Fed is basically the one supporting it by printing money, right? So I would say if you're looking at S&P or even perhaps any stock indices, right, direction is up. Okay. So you have a very clear direction. Then the next thing is when to get involved in it, right? So you take a look at the S&P. Obviously, we are retesting like that highs. Let's say we are like close to that all-time high right now. Okay, and I would say there's a very good chance it will break it. Okay. However, the one risk here you want to keep an eye on is this, of course, can just consolidate, okay, before the break. Okay, might see maybe this week, okay, this can happen. The consolidation can happen this week, right? So you're gonna just go sideways. Hard to say right now, honestly, okay. So if I'm looking to take trades like that, obviously I'll put in a breakout and then add in a little bit of room, ensure that it's a firm break. But at the same time, if I were to take a trade, I'll be aware that this has a possibility of coming back down first before the upside, something. Okay, so as part of like your plan, some ways you can play around with it is that you can maybe enter a small position here, look out for another position here to add in. Okay, and then if that happens, you have two trades running. I'm not saying that you blindly just go in when it comes down here, right? The idea is, of course, if this comes down here and it starts to form a correction pattern, a crawl like that, then your probability upside is definitely there. Then that's where you can add in something like that, right? So this is my view on S&P. I think stock market generally is still upside. Okay, focus on the buy, setup, and opportunity that you can see. Yeah, but again, Monday markets are usually quite fakey in a way. It likes to just fake out and then just do back its consolidation and then only start going. Okay, so Monday market, just be very, very cautious. Always say Monday, if you can, try not to execute trades. Okay, because a lot of fakes happens on Monday. Yeah, hope that helps. Which pair will have similar move in charts? Okay, now if you're looking at correlated pair, right? Very good question. If basically you're looking at correlated pairs, okay, that's how you get, I would say, similar charts, right? So correlated pairs are like, for example, if you take a look at yen pairs, right? Your dollar yen, euro yen, pound yen, cat yen, Aussie yen, Kiwi yen, more or less they move in tandem. Okay, and then of course you have like the correlation between Aussie and New Zealand. So if you look at like Aussie dollar versus New Zealand dollar, then of course you have the tendency in tandem as well, right? So this is what we call correlation. Okay, so just be aware about that. And when we talk about correlation here again, you want to be aware of what we call risk exposure, which means that if today you are taking a buy on, let's say, Aussie dollar, okay, then you're also looking to buy at New Zealand dollar, then you're exposed yourself 2 times, right? Because both of this pair here tends to move together. One way to do it is to either reduce your lot sizes, or you kind of like filter off one of it. Okay, so that's usually how we do it. Okay, yeah. Okay, in terms of someone asked about dollar cat, right? So I think dollar cat, one of you actually asked about it as well, Tag. Okay. So this is the part where I want you to know, right? We have the direction, but we always say don't just buy it just because there is a clear direction, right? You want to have a proper setup, right? So if you take a look at the daily chart right now, I'm still more in favor of looking out for buy opportunity for the cat. Okay. But the question is always asking yourself, do you have a setup to get involved in the buy, right? So you have the direction clear, but you need to also have your execution, your timing, price point where you get in needs to be fairly of like accurate, right? You cannot just anyhow buy when direction is clear. That's the beauty of technical analysis. Okay? Fundamental gives you a broad picture direction. Technical gives you that specific of like details of timing perspective. Okay, so over here you can see on the daily chart, if you ask me today, I'll still say focus on the buy side. Okay, even though price is just basically down, right? Because the upside has way more room for you to capitalize on, and the probability of that push to the upside is there. Okay. Now, if you go down to the 4-hour time frame, however, okay, it's obvious that you do not want to buy a pattern like that, right? Because there's no setup that validates that short-term buy, okay, or validates the buy execution right now. Okay, so I want you to be all very clear is that, okay, you need to have a technique, a method, a strategy, execute your trade. Okay, so just now I mentioned it can be candlestick formation, it can be price action, can be indicators. Okay, to me, all of this works. Okay, but at the end of the day, you need to have a proper plan that suits you. So for me, I always look at patterns, right? Some of you who have been following it for long enough, you know 2 patterns I always look at: the flag, the diagonal, the crawl. Okay, that's what we call it. So right now, if you take a look at this, right, if I just remove all these lines and realize that we do not have a setup that validates for me to get involved in the trade, right? So why would you buy if, let's say, this is coming down like that? You wouldn't want to buy it, right? You want to at least wait for a crawl, okay? And do not see that right now, okay? So I want you to know that, this is also not only to kind of like give some guidance to tech, okay? But I think everyone here who is listening, watching, okay, this is important, okay? It can, not just from the videos that you watch, but I think if, let's say, today you are also getting, you know, different perspective, different insights from various resources, various videos out there, or even articles. Be very clear that you need to have, at the end of the day, your own method to get involved in the trade. Okay? So you can see here, right, why we have the analysis process and then the execution process, because our analysis can tell us the direction, but the execution is the timing. So if both of this don't come together, you don't get involved in it. Okay? And obviously, you need to have stop loss, right? Because no matter how well your analysis is, how well your execution is, you will be wrong, okay? And you need to kind of like cut your losses fairly quickly. Let's say you get the market prove that you're wrong, just get out. Yeah. So looking at this right now, I think there's a possibility we'll see this come back down all the way to its low here. Okay, around 1.265 region. Okay, and ideally what we want to see is, of course, this starts to form that crawl, right? And if that happens, then we have another solid trade to take it to the upside. But for this crawl to happen, you need at least 1 to 2 weeks time, because this is on a 4-hour scale. So that's why you realize that I don't really emphasize a lot on this for this pair for this week, simply because I think if this were to develop into a crawl, we need to leave this for another 1 to 2 weeks time, and basically do nothing on it. Just sit out, wait for it to develop, and when it develops into a pattern like that, then you start to pro trade to exit. Okay, so hope that's clear. Okay. We have one question here asking about diagonal. Okay. Now, I don't really do short-term trades, right? I think you asked about short-term trades. I don't really do short-term trades. More of it is on swing, but this week, if you're looking at short-term trade, it's like dollar franc and dollar cat. That's the two. Speaking of that, right? Let's use dollar franc here to illustrate what we call diagonal. Obviously, not all diagonals are gonna look exactly the same. They are not gonna be picture perfect all the time. Okay. But what you see over here, okay, this one is a diagonal itself, right? We call it a crawl to make it easier, right? You get a push down and then it starts to slow. So this one here is what we call a diagonal. It comes in various forms and sizes, obviously. Okay. Previously we have a diagonal here as well. Okay, this one. That's also a diagonal. Okay. So yeah, these are how it looks like, right? Again, you want to study roughly how it looks like, okay? Because it's not gonna be exactly the same all the time. So what you really want to study is like the feel of that pattern, right? You can see this one here and this one here, more or less they look the same. Okay. If you go to like dollar yen, okay, one here looks more or less the same. Okay. So these are all diagonals, but they look a little bit different at the same time, right? Okay, if you take a look at New Zealand dollar, this one here that potentially can develop into, okay, can be a diagonal as well, right? Okay, of course, this needs more time, but this can be a potential diagonal as well, right? So take a look at how it's developed. Basically, a very strong push, and then after that, it slows down. Okay, that's why we call it a crawl, because the idea is that initially you have a lot of momentum, and then after that, dies down, right? That's the idea of a diagonal. Yeah, hope that helps. Oh, hey, great. Okay, so again, I think today's session here, on top of just, you know, opportunities in the market, I think we did discuss a little bit into like, so based on the questions, based on some of the things that you guys mentioned, we actually talk a little bit more into like how you should approach trading, right? I think that's also very important, right? Of course, if today you really want to do this sustainably, okay, and make this into maybe a potential career path for yourself, and not just something like, oh, today I want to have fun in the market and I just come in and play around with it. Okay, so if today you're someone who is serious and wants to take it like in the next level for yourself in terms of career, sustainable side income, you can't come in the market and think that you know, you don't need to put in the work. Okay, there are a lot of things that you need to definitely study, right? And my role here, coming in on a weekly basis to share with you opportunity, at the same time dropping you some lessons here and there. Ideally is to really give you, number one, of course, the real picture of trading. Number two is to help you along the way a little bit here and there, to give you some insights into how we do it, okay? And of course, depend on whether it suits you or not, right? So I want you to see that you can't just base on, you know, coming in once a week and not do the work and then hoping that you become the trader. Okay, um, it's not gonna happen. Okay, you definitely need to put in work. Okay, that's the brutal truth, right? Now, not a lot of people would like to hear that, but I always say you definitely put in effort. Okay, and don't think about getting rich quick. Okay, that happens. You know, there's always that phenomenon where news tends to report people who make a lot of money in a very short period of time. You know, 2020 we have that, right? Wall Street bets and everything happening. Um, you know, I want you to know, don't have that perception. Okay, if you want to be consistent, sustainable in trading, risk management is very important. Okay, and it's not about getting rich quick. It's about getting it consistent so that you can compound your capital, then eventually hit milestone that you want to. Okay, so I think that's very important. Okay, yeah, so that's all for me over here today. Okay, I hope it helps. Okay, so with that, I'll end off today's session over here. For those of you who are interested to join us on Thursday, okay, we have a Chinese Mandarin session very similar to this. Okay, we do a live analysis and open up for Q&A. The only difference here, of course, is that session is delivered Mandarin in China. Okay. So that's all for me. All the best to you guys for the week. Okay, if you have any further questions, just feel free to drop it in comments, or feel free to get in touch with me any of the social media platform, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, whatever it is. I'll be more than happy to answer your questions. Okay, so all the best, and I'll see you guys. Right, bye.